Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramona, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve, Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I'm so thrilled to have you join us today. We've dedicated this podcast to exploring the idea of a servant's heart, how to utilize that in your business and your life to make an impact and change. I'm blessed. I get to do it every day. You can be blessed too. And we bring guests on to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you how you can do the same thing. Today, it's going to be about trading and financial. Money's important. Money's emotional. Money's money. We're going to talk about how you can serve with it even more. And your homework today, audience, is I want you to think about how you're going to serve yourself and others today. What impact you create today. Too many people tell me, I waited. You should be trying to do this every day. It could be as small as, hey, you got a beautiful smile, to $1 million to your church and everything in between. Just go and impact and serve others. I want to thank my great sponsor, Pantheon. Join a community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders who are creating a world-changing thought leader platform to grow your business, but also impact the world. There'll be a link in the show notes, and you can reach out to me for any questions on that. Well, as I said, financial, money, all that can be very scary or very exciting. It's everywhere. We need it. My guest today has been doing for many years. We'll find out how many, but he's worked with a lot of people. So let's bring on our guest, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you shared with me an interesting background story. Why don't you tell the audience what that's all about?
Well, I have been bitten by, when I was in college, I went to school for electrical and computer engineering in University of Colorado. And while I was in college, I worked for a brokerage firm. This is back in the 80s, so let you know how old I am. I'm 55 now. And I had a job at a broker called Dean Witter, cold calling for brokers while I was in college. And then I will never forget, I was watching a computer screen back in those days, were fairly primitive compared to what we have now, but it was just options trading, prices flickering on there. And I just thought, wow, what if I could use engineering to make computers analyze the market so I can get in on these trades quickly, And so I was bitten at that point. I really got the bug, the fever for trading, and I've never really shaken it. It's just been a passion of mine. And I remember I got my Schwab account, and Schwab was open 24 hours, and I could talk to brokers all night long and answer all my questions, and got all the books on options and all this sort of stuff. So that was a huge passion of mine. And when I was in college, I even made some clubs for traders to see if we couldn't start to do some analysis then. I followed all the big traders, Williams, and all these kind of people trading futures. And then I finally got a job engineering and had some money to start to work with, and started trading myself on the side. And really took a deep dive. I remember TradeStation was big at that time. This was in the early 90s, and trying to use that to analyze the markets and make algorithms. And so, I mean, it just went on and on from there. So I've worked for some very big engineering companies. I helped design the chips for, they're in the Jaguar for Ford, and chips for Intel. And I worked for the government on some programs, designing chips was my big thing in engineering. But all throughout that time, I was really always trading on the side, even at my desk at times, and ultimately I made a small fund, and it was kind of a novelty thing, called it the New World Order was the website. And at the time I had no idea about the laws around marketing investments. I just thought I know how to trade, and I'm going to get people and trade their money. And so it's kind of funny because I got a lot of crackpots sending me emails saying, I've heard of the New World Order, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I even had this it was just kind of meant in humor. I had this eyeball and a pyramid on there and all this stuff. And it said, we are going public. We were a secret organization, but now you can share in the wealth that we're doing. Sign
Very
up.
cool.
We're going public. So the state, I guess somebody complained to the state, and so I was living in Colorado at the time, but they were pretty good about it. They just said, look, you need to get registered, and as an investment advisor, you needed to register investment. You can't just throw stuff like that up. And so they were pretty good about it. I could have gotten a lot more trouble. So then I learned about the laws of it, and I became a registered investment advisor, and ultimately, to cut the story short, I became a registered investment advisor while I was still an engineer, and I had the fortunate experience of being able to work for a small hedge fund and leave my engineering job and start my own firm. And this was right during the dot-com boom. So because I was a registered advisor and an engineer, a lot of companies would hire me to vet technology. Companies that investment corporations that were trying to take small tech companies public. It was a big thing in the late 90s. So I then learned about how to take companies public, and at the same time I was working for a small hedge fund because they had gotten into some trouble and building an entire administrative system for them. So I learned a lot about hedge funds and how I didn't want things to go because their fund had a severe accounting problem, and they hired me to fix it. So I got a lot of great experience from that. And also at the same time, I was doing these public company valuations. So it became clear to me that, hey, rather than try to predict the market, I should really do what these companies are hiring me to do. And I could list a company on the stock exchange. So I'll just go, find out, I'll create some companies and sell them as shells using like existing businesses that I had. So I got into that racket, and it's really interesting. And took some companies public, sold them, kept one company, and put all my technology into it. When the dot-com bust happened, I lost all my money was in stocks of these companies that I had listed and everything. So I went from being a millionaire to owing money, for overnight within a few months. And so we kept a company that I was going to sell as a shell. That had one of my businesses in it already. It was internet marketing business. And I threw in the hedge fund management, project management software into that company. And my partners and I just kind of kept it as a life raft to just sort of get through the dot-com bust. But it ended up, we committed ourselves to building up that company as a project management company. And also I had software for hedge fund administration that I'd built. So none of the hedge funds wanted to keep their stuff in the United States, their data. So we ended up setting up an office, the headquarters of the company, after looking at different places. At that time, we moved it to Cape Town, South Africa, which seemed to be a great, perfect place. We could hire people inexpensively there, qualified people, and just a beautiful place to live as well. So I moved my family out there, and ultimately, at one point before I left the United States, I had a relationship with the CIA because we developed some technology to hide your point of presence on the internet so that we could send out spam. Basically, we're making a lot of money sending out spam for clients. But when I checked sometimes what people were sending out, occasionally I'd have these nutcases on there, even terrorists who are threatening members of Congress and all this sort of stuff, and because their emails couldn't be traced back. So I'd see things like that, and I had their credit card numbers because they're charge your card to use the system. And so I contacted the CIA, gave them information on these kind of people when they came up. And so we had this relationship established. Then I started to do some business in Mexico, trying to create US dollar denominated products to sell to people in Mexico because the peso, goes up and down so much. And that was somewhat successful, but then that attracted a crowd of unsavory characters who kind of made an offer that we couldn't refuse. It was just sort of like, if you want to keep operating down here, or you gotta move some money for us, in a nutshell. I mean, it was a longer process than that, but that's what happened. So I spoke to the people I was working with in the CIA about this, and they got very excited, and they said, well, why don't you can go ahead and work with them. You can keep the money that you make, but we want to know everything that's happening, and so they gave me a bit of training on safe houses and certain things like that, pretty minimal stuff, but they offered to pay for some plane fare and things like that. And but they said if I would get into trouble, they wouldn't say that they work with me if I got into trouble and did illegal stuff. So I did some freelancing. I was really excited about this, and in the process of embedding myself in with these people, I got other IDs and passports and other things. I did what I could with the connections I had in the government of Mexico at the time, and other governments, because these people are well connected. So anyway, that relationship, it just became more and more dangerous, and it wasn't a lot of fun. And when I'd go down to Mexico and they'd take me out, it just got worse and worse, and some really bad things went down. But right around 9/11, the CIA handler said to me, "Hey, we have to stop what we're doing. We have to end this program." I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, our legal department has determined that there's too much integration. You would either have to become a contractor for us and go through training, or you'd have to be a foreign citizen for us to be working with you like this, or we'll have to make all kinds of disclosures that we would want to do." And I was like, "Well, what, am I in trouble now?" And I said, "No, you're not in trouble." I said, "What the hell am I supposed to do? I'm embedded with these people, and they could kill me, and they said, "Well, you're a smart guy. You'll figure out how to get out of that."
Wow.
So yeah,
What a comment.
I was kind of freaked out. And so a couple of weeks went by, and I called the FBI because I said, "I just can't just, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but so I called them. They came to my office. They were super interested. And then 9/11 happened about 3 weeks later. And I couldn't even get them on the phone. They said, "We're going to come back into the office, and we're going to, go through all this with you and figure out how we can use you and all this stuff, and, whatever, protect you, and, how, But then, they called me back and said, "Listen, 9/11, I mean, this thing that happened, all our resources are on that right now. So we're going to circle back around to you later." And I'm just sitting here thinking, what am I supposed to do here? Just party with these guys and keep
Yep.
rock and rolling. So, so ultimately, this was right around the same time, though, that we were looking at moving our office to South Africa. And so what I did was I spoke to these guys and I said, "Listen, my company's coming under investigation by the IRS, and I think that this is gonna. I think we should just halt what we're doing together for right now, so it doesn't have any trails going back and forth." And they pretty much just bought that. I was really concerned that I was going to have meet Jesus, and all this, but I didn't really hear from them. They called me a few times. "How's it going? How's this investigation going?" And when I moved to South Africa, they called me one time and said, "Hey, how's it going out there? Is there business we could do out there?" And just didn't really. That was it, though. Thank
Separate
God.
yourself.
Yeah. So that worked out okay. Just not a big deal. But the reason I mention all that is because ultimately, when I was running my public company in South Africa, in a nutshell, one of the people I was investigating for the CIA had nothing to do with this drug cartel, realized that I was working for law enforcement, and they set about the business of trying to destroy me. And it's a pretty smart character. So the guy basically sent out all kinds of anonymous emails. Every time we put out a press release on my public company, he'd contact the banks and stuff that we're doing business with. And as I grew that company really fast, we were in different countries, China, Denmark, within a year of us having landed in South Africa. So and we were doing major deals with Maersk, the shipping company. We had basically a projects management business, and we went. I had people from the government of South Africa on my advisory board for my company, and all this really great stuff was happening. So I just kind of grew it out of control really fast. But all the while, this guy started sending out emails, and at some point, anonymous emails to all of our clients and U.S. regulators, everybody from the IRS to the SEC and everybody in between, just saying that we're a company is fraudulent, just trying to stir up trouble. And it worked. The SEC started investigating our company, and they they're going to find something, but they kept making all kinds of accusations. Our press releases are, wrong, and we're making up stories. And so we'd send them all the proof, and no, we're not. But, they were, at this point, the SEC was sending letters to our clients saying we're under investigation. So companies started to get wrecked right in the middle of this. And ultimately they halted trading on our company without really any evidence that we're doing anything wrong. They just did these things. And, it was devastating. I lost this company, and we had 60 employees in different countries, and it's not so easy to just fire people in different countries. It, you know, but and I was living in South Africa, didn't have a work permit or any of that. It's very difficult. Just lost everything overnight. And you know, ultimately, I was waiting for, I had a lawyer in the U.S., was waiting for uh, the SEC to settle. I thought it was going to be a civil lawsuit of some kind. And it turns out for 3 years, they were doing a grand jury investigation, doing a criminal investigation, which I didn't know. So I started listing companies from South Africa on the stock exchange in the US. Had some pretty good, successful companies, that good ones, life-saving companies, for people, medical stuff. And so I just rebuilt my life. And then finally, I found out I was indicted. I went to travel to Dubai, but I have friends in the government of South Africa who say, hey, you can't leave the country because you're going to get hit at the airport and all this. I said, oh my God, what is this all about? Well, it was a sealed indictment, and had these sealed warrants for my arrest. And then when we hired an attorney to unseal it all, and they had all this stuff in the indictment that I'd done for the CIA. So it was like a haunted house in there. And I must have looked really nefarious to them, and they had no idea that I was working with the CIA. So fortunately, the CIA did acknowledge our relationship, and did so. It knocked out all the charges, except for one that the SEC kept, which would normally be a civil action, if anything, which is like, in this case, they call it related party transactions. It's like insider trading, because I had an investment advising company, and some of my clients had stock in our company, and I would sell that stock for them in their account. Everybody knew this, the auditors and everybody, but it just wasn't reported, and they on our filings, and they made it seem like I was taking that money and putting it in my pocket, but the accounting records show otherwise. So ultimately, I had to fight this charge, and the CIA said, well, that has nothing to do with us or anything we did, so we can't defend that. Even though the whole reason I was indicted is because all the other stuff, it looked horrible.
Yeah.
So I came back to the U.S. It was a very difficult. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of that. I really didn't think I was going to go to jail, especially when I was able to show that the accounts that we didn't steal any money. But things being what they are, and the justice system sort of being like in a fast food sort of restaurant, I ended up having to plead guilty because, they're saying that I should have reported something that wasn't, that wasn't reported. It's not really a winnable case. And they really were just still had the taste in their mouth of all that other stuff that was dropped out of the indictment. So I ended up having to plead guilty. They were going to, I was looking at potentially 25 years because of the way they stack all the charges, and the same thing over and over again: wire fraud, and wiring money and all this sort of stuff. And so I pled it down to a maximum of 5 years, and then through the miracle of the way the U.S. justice system is working, I ended up getting that 5 years because when we went through a year of pre-sentencing because of all this accounting work and everything, and without getting into the details, it's just I learned a lot about the justice system. It's really broken.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the story is, let's talk about the Jesus system, because you've all this experience, negative, and you did wrong things, but you're back serving people. Talk about Jesus system.
Yeah, so I'm still a trader, amazingly, and the good news is that when you have something that works, people still want to work with you, when you have talents and capabilities. So the fact that I'd gone to spend a little time in prison didn't stop that. So, but again, I have a thing that coming out. You see on the internet all the time. I'm on Facebook a lot, and you'll see a thing come by there, like sort of body, become build up your body, become healthy, learn the secrets of how to live your life and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, the only thing that really got my family and I through anything was our faithfulness to Jesus and our commitment to living as best we can according to the scriptures, even when we fail, to meet the mark. And that's what pulled my family and I through all the experience of prison and all the negative things. My wife, fighting cancer and all this stuff. And so when I see these ads on there, I came to my mind, it's like, listen, also I had, at one point in my life, fortunately, when we lived in South Africa, I was exposed to I became a professional consciousness coach. It was really a godsend at the time, because I don't know that we would have as easily gotten through everything we were going to go through had we not trained on that. So for a year and a half, I went through some really serious consciousness training, and my wife did too, and all my people in my business. And so I became a professional coach, but it ended up, that I would need the same thing. So lifestyle, it's not really just, me telling people what to do. But point is, through when I was in prison, I spent 3.5 years reading all the different works of different religions, and all the stuff they had in federal prison around. They had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of self-improvement courses, Tony Robbins stuff, all this stuff, which was all good stuff. So I committed myself to sort of becoming a guru, to really study this stuff and take notes, which I did. Studied all the religions, stuff I didn't even know was a religion, Rastafarianism, aliens, all this stuff. And through all that studying, I can honestly say that Jesus is the most sophisticated of any of the religions out there. And nobody can tell me otherwise, because I did a deep dive in all of them. And so people would say, like, well, we're all searching for the same God and all this. And well, we might be searching for the same God, but there's a lot of faiths out there that are going to mislead you and take you in the wrong direction. And that's just a fact, So JesusSystem.com, if anybody's interested, I'm getting ready to release this program, which consists of books and just some online testing of yourself that you can take. And so the Jesus system is really at its foundation. This is what could be really helpful for the audience. It begins with there's a process in the Jesus system. First of all, the first part of the process is just to acknowledge that there is a universal order that governs the operation of the universe. Okay, birds fly south for a reason. Fish aren't transgender, neither are bears or any of this sort of stuff. At least for the most part, as far as we know. But at any rate, there are laws that govern the universe. All right. And when the concept is, so my concept is, you're going to flip through Facebook and you're going to see an ad. It's going to say how to live to your greatest potential, how to have your greatest potential experience of life. And it's not based on any kind of hocus pocus. It's based on 2,000 years worth of experience that we can look back on, of people who have engaged with us and had amazing experiences, life-changing experiences that we can all recognize, whether you believe in God or not. So at the foundational element of this is say, look, there's an order to the universe. We can't deny that. We can't escape that. And when we work against that order, we are not living to our greatest potentiality. We're causing pain and suffering to ourselves and those around us. And so the next leap is of understanding is to say, look, for better or for worse, well, you think you're living your life all by yourself. There are thousands of years worth of teachings and wisdom that have been codified into a book called the Bible. And so all the things that many people have to learn through trial and error that are wrong are already addressed in that book. And so if you were to read that book, and you were to not just read it, but to adopt a lifestyle that conforms with the obvious teachings of the book, and that also forces you to continually examine what is true and what is false, or in other words, one of the beautiful things about the Bible is that it really mandates that you have an ongoing relationship with God. What does that look like? Well, that looks like trying to derive what it is how you should behave, how to discern truth from false. And how would you do that? Well, use the manual. do your best. And sometimes you're not going to get it right. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's an open debate amongst religions, but you have to choose a path. Unfortunately, the scriptures even talk about that. They say, well, if you're convinced of it, each person must be convinced in their own heart of what is true in these disputable issues. Okay, because there will be disputable issues. And I like to think that people who have a closer relationship with God are going to make better decisions about those disputable issues than people that don't. So once you acknowledge that there's an order, that this book was written, that if you read it, you will observe that it does describe the natural order and all its chaos as well that goes along with it. A lot of unusual things that people are shocked at when they read the scriptures, say, hey, this is life, baby. This is the way things are. And so the rest of the book is really around, if you can accept those two things, then how do you go about the business of actually implementing that in your life? How do you do this? Because I think the book of James probably goes into some of the most detail about your tongue. So I talk about things like the power of your word, the power of, the integrity. So here's where we get into the business elements of this. And the foundational element that separates us from animals is that we have the ability to change our own behavior. And that means that we can change the way that we think about things, and we can change the way that we even feel about things. Even though feelings can be generated at random, we can still have we can recognize when feelings are not leading us in the right way. We can recognize that our thinking is limited and therefore we can be deceived. And so awareness at its base level, which I call enlightenment. An enlightened person is someone who places their thinking and feeling under examination 24 hours, 7 days a week. So in other words, they become the full-time observer of their own thinking and feeling. Sounds like a simple thing to do, but it's not. But it does if you engage in that practice all the time, it certainly makes it easier for you to look at other people's behavior, because the hardest one is to observe your own behavior.
Yep.
But that distinction of enlightened people versus people who are not enlightened is a big deal, because most of the people in society, I'd say 75% at least, if not more, walk around and they think, well, this is who I am. I mean, this is how I feel. This is how I think. And I'm not going to be able to be changed, or this. Well, if that were true, then drug addicts would never be able to go into recovery. If that were true, then, abusive marriages would never, be resolved. They would always be abusive. In other words, our greatest ability is our ability to change. And all that, in fact, what people refer to as personality, or ego is the bad word for it. Personality, maybe a general word, and charisma is another word for it. But that personality is really just a fictitious character that is created as a result of our own experience in life. And so when you can recognize these things, you can start to reprogram that character, that personality. In the beginning, it'll fight you, especially the older you are, and the more your brain circuitry is hooked up to behave in a certain way. It can be more difficult, but just as important. So this is what the book talks about. It talks about these practical tools, awareness. It talks about the acceptance of the natural order. It talks about your responsibility to use, or the availability of the scriptures to help you to live within that natural order. And at the highest level of consciousness, it would be someone who completely submits themselves to those scriptures and submits themselves to believe in God. Literally, it is a decision that someone has to make, and to then exercise faith on a constant basis in order to cope with the undesirable circumstances that we tend to find ourselves in, or that are being thrust at us every day through media and different things which really have no consciousness of God.
So it's fair. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end here. I don't want to forget, because we've got overtime for a good reason, because this is powerful. How can people get the book access? I know it's almost available, but where can people go grab access?
If they can go to the website, jesussystem.com, they can just sign up to say that they'd like to be notified when the release of the book and the program come. and they'll be able
Great.
to associate with it.
Yeah, and you gave a great summary of what people can expect. And how can people reach out to you, connect with you to ask more questions?
I have a website too. It's called ericmajors.com. And, if you sign up for the book or, at jesussystem.com or ericmajors.com, we could speak together. There's obviously there's so much more to this. We could go on. What that's the whole purpose.
Yeah. There's a lot entailed, but you gave us a great cliff notes, I guess is the word that comes to my head, of this whole system. I got 1 minute or two left. I got a quick question I always ask my guests to get to know you a little more. So I've got a reservation at a restaurant for you, table 4. You're going to sit in one of the chairs. Who would you invite, whether they're dead or alive, and what food would you order for the table?
A reservation where?
Anywhere you want. You tell me, but I'm going to reserve table 4. Who would you like to talk to at that dinner?
Well, if it were possible, I'd love to talk to Jesus.
There you go. I figured he'd be one.
Sure. Who would I like to talk to other than that? I would suppose maybe our popular figures of today, Trump, Musk, I'd love to talk with them. And also I'd love to talk with someone who I could best serve, someone that I could really make an impact on their life in a positive way. I think that would be a great thing to do, to be able to do.
And what's the table eating?
I'm sorry?
What food were we eating at the table?
Well, for me, it would have to be steak, fish, just the fundamental,
staples of America. No,
protein.
I love it. That's steak and fish. And Jesus will eat anything. Jesus will bring the fish, matter of fact. Again, the 2 websites, how people can connect with you so people can access that.
jesussystem.com and ericmajors.com.
Eric, thank you. Man, this is an incredible system. I can't wait to look at. Audience, go reach out to them or just grab the system. It'll be available soon. And take this podcast, subscribe to it or others, because if you're somebody that needs this Jesus system, a lot is entailed in this. You could change somebody's life with it. Just sending this podcast to them and they listen and go, I got to reach out to Eric, or I got to grab that system, and it changes their life. What I say at the beginning, it's a gift you get to give, like Christmas every morning. With that being said, me and Eric want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.